Hey, what's going on? Miguel, the host of Life Full Circle Radio. Yes, it is Thursday afternoon, and we normally go live Thursday night. And so you can watch this tonight if you just catching up to it, because I got stuff to do tonight. One of my kids has got a recital tonight. And so for all y'all out here who are parents, y'all know what I'm talking about. You know how we get down. So a lot going on. The State of the Union was this past Tuesday, and Joe Biden, old Sleepy Joe, pulled one over on the Republicans. Boy, I swear they looked a plum fool with Marjorie Taylor Greene with her gangster coat on up in the crowd. So we're going to talk about that. The 50th anniversary of hip hop was showcased at the Grammys, and they put on a show. But in Atlanta, they decided to cut the show and go to commercial right when Big Boy was coming on the stage. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Roland Martin eviscerated this Republican conservative who came on the show and pulled the old Chicago conversation, and he played himself. We know Roland got all the smoke. All right, let's go. All right, so anyway, as we here. As I mentioned, some of the content that we use here on the Life of Circle Radio, you can check it out and grab some of that stuff here. All right. What's going on, super producer?
Oh my God. It's the middle of the afternoon.
I know that, it's for those, we do have real lives and real jobs. And so, but it came down to my middle daughter. She said, "Oh, Daddy, don't forget I've got the band recital tonight." And I'm looking like, and my baby girl was like, "Oh yeah, Daddy's got a show tonight." Oh, I guess Daddy doesn't have a show tonight.
So you were seeing me barefaced. Normally you guys see me with a little bit of makeup. And today it was like, nah, this is not going to work. Between getting ready for a big, huge wedding that we are going to tomorrow night, plus family coming in town, plus Super Bowl weekend, plus some family stuff is going on.
Right.
Makeup was not going
No, I get it. I get it. Believe me when I tell you, I was just like, "Whoa, this day won't stop," but it's all good. One thing I do when we have commitments or people who have committed their time to us, my man Chuck Hobbs is going to come on the show here in about 30 minutes, 20 minutes or so, actually 20 minutes. He's going to talk about HBCUs. We've been talking. There's a lot of conversation going on between the Deion Sanders stuff, and now you gone and your little picture done fell. Oh, boy, I swear for goodness, you got to give me some.
I forgot. I took notes from my dad about today's show. I left them on my other desk. I have to pick them up.
So I'll bring her back in when she comes back. But anyway, Chuck Hobbs, as we mentioned, he'll be on the show here today, and it's all good. It's, we having fun here. And we want to talk HBCUs. Chuck is a two-time HBCU graduate, Morehouse. He's a Morehouse man. He's also a family rattler, like the super producer here. I'm a Norfolk State Spartan, behold the green and gold. And so, but there's a lot about the business of HBCUs and the history of HBCUs. We want to be able to enlighten a few folks on that here today. So Chuck will be on here shortly. He'll be talking about that, and we'll be engaged in that particular conversation. But let's get into our conversation for today. And so we're going to kind of stay right here because I ain't had time to build out a whole lot of graphics, so we're gonna keep it moving. We're gonna keep it real up here in these Life Full Circle shoots. So let's start off with the State of the Union, because Tuesday was the State of the Union. I believe last year was still coming out of COVID, so I don't believe there was a crowd for that. And so this was the first time, you had George Santos there, who Mitt Romney decided to let him know that you ain't got no business up in here. He was on him. But the highlight of the night, it was a long speech. Here's the thing about Joe Biden that a lot of people, black folks always say, but Joe Biden, he this, and he was part of the crime bill in 93, and he was this. Joe Biden, love him or hate him, for 40 years has been someone who's lived squarely in the middle. He's had, he's a Democrat, but he's had Republican friends. He's always been that person. Somebody's got to be a bridge. And last night, or Tuesday night, with this speech, it was a little bit of that bridge conversation, but it was a little bit more bare knuckles Joe than a lot of folks expected, because when folks wanted,
Dark Brandon's what they call him. That's his superhero name, Dark Brandon.
Dark Brandon. For people,
that's what it is.
Who's calling him Dark Brandon? Is that people on the left call him Dark Brandon?
Yes, look
Do I
up
just
Dark
look
Brandon
that
on
up?
Twitter, and they turned him into a superhero with laser eyes. Like he shoots out lasers out of his eyes and attacks his people.
But the other branding thing, what is the branding thing the conservatives have out there? It's
Oh, let's go, Brandon.
Let's Go Brandon,
Which
which
basically means
is
F you, Joe
which
Biden.
means F Joe Biden. So if you see a Let's Go Brandon bumper sticker and you don't feel like getting into no scuffle with no crazy folks, just walk the other way in the grocery store parking lot because they didn't told you what they think.
I would say throw an egg, but eggs are so expensive these
Eggs are too
days.
expensive. Nah, man, that egg is gonna have to end up in somebody's cake or in somebody's anyway. But what happened with Joe on Tuesday night when he brought up the seniors and Social Security and Medicaid, in which we know that is a big talking point on the right about those type of services, and he put it out there, and they flat out said, we're not cutting those services, and old Marjorie Taylor Greene with her mafia jacket on decided to call him out and try to say
Is
that
she going
he's
to be in
lying.
the new season of BMF? Because that was a BMF mom jacket. Did it have fur on the collar?
Oh, it was crazy. I looked at her. She is a piece of work. But she called him a liar. And what he ended up doing, if people haven't seen it, look it up. He boxed the Republicans in. He successfully boxed the Republicans in because when he said that they were talking about trying to take away Medicare, which they've been doing forever, they've been talking about trying to take away Medicaid and Medicare for years. And they said, well, no, you're lying. We don't want to do that. Really? Okay, well, call my office. I can send you the proposal. Oh, you're a liar. You're a liar. Oh, so we're saying here right now, the State of the Union, that's off the table. And then it was like, uh-oh.
They're like, ooh, that wasn't supposed to happen.
McCarthy was over his shoulder like, shut up. Like, wish y'all shut up.
Now they are boxed in, which is good. And another thing that I thought was highly inappropriate was Joe Biden called an end to the fentanyl crisis in the United States. With him and Donald Trump both wanted to cause an end to the opioid crisis. Ain't nobody done nothing. But one of the lawmakers actually yelled out, "It's your fault," in reference to the amount of drugs that are smuggled across the U.S.-Mexico border. What kills me about this, even as a Republican, is there is a whole other border that everybody act like does not exist.
Right.
It's called Canada.
Act like no drugs come through Canada. Exactly.
Nothing comes through Canada. It just brings all the happy white people into the States, even though a lot of people who come from Canada end up being serial killers. Carla Homolka, who now lives in Michigan after she murdered 7 people with her husband. But that's another conversation nobody wants to have. So it's just inappropriate that
that's an excellent point, because it's always they try to act like it's not about racism, and like you said, most of the people coming from Canada are going to be white, and so we never talk about the Canadian border, right? We never talk about who comes through Detroit and through other parts of the Canadian border, and you're right.
Also, I feel like we've backed off of people who fly here and stay for extended period of time, even though they know they're not supposed to stay for extended period of time. And that's not just Middle Easterns. It's every single country. They come here saying, I'm just coming to visit so-and-so. Well, you were supposed to visit so-and-so 6 months ago, and now you're still here.
Right.
You shouldn't be here anymore. But what I want to say is the screaming out at the president, whether you like him or not, Donald Trump, it does not matter. It is highly inappropriate at any point to be yelling out at a sitting president during a state of, it's inappropriate.
And we saw that happen the first time in recent memory to Obama, 10, 12 years ago, right? And at that point, we were just like, oh, clutch the pearls.
Everybody was. Even the Republicans like, oh, which one of y'all did that? That was not what we talked about. No.
Right. Now, all bets are off. It's a lot of cackling, a lot of screaming, a lot of hollering. And it's just disrespectful. And the decorum, and these are the people that are trying to teach we're supposed to be teaching our children how to move, and these folks are just acting a plumb fool. But it depended on who you're talking to. He did a great job Tuesday night.
One more point that I wanted to bring up was the fact that he mentioned the talk that Black parents have to have with their children when facing the police. And of course, everybody online is like, well, I've already, I talked to my kids too. It's not special. It's a completely different conversation. We are treated differently by police officers. Our parents know that. I have told the story on the show before. I was respectful to police officers. When I got pulled over, they took me out of my car. When I was crying, they said it made them uncomfortable that I was hiding something. They took everything out of my car and searched my car, then took my car and left me at a Burger King. It took me 6 hours to get home that day. And
Yeah.
and 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 when I got to court, the court was like, "Why are you here?" I was like, "I don't know." And they're like, "Well, you had a license, you had insurance,
Yeah.
so just pay these court costs and go home." But that was a
Right.
traumatic experience for me.
Well, and I didn't pull it, but Revolt TV has published some video of in the Tyreek situation where I just didn't want to believe it that this cop who ended up killing this man actually took pictures of, but he did. There's video of him taking pictures. What he did with those pictures was highly inappropriate. Because they say they took the pictures. They tried to bring in a whole relationship with the other woman, his ex-girlfriend who worked at the FedEx joint.
Wait, he took pictures of what?
He took pictures he took pictures of the brother on the car, leaned up against a police car after he had abused him. Him and the other cops had abused him.
For
Yeah.
what purpose? I mean, that's a real question. For what? To do what with?
Well, at this point, the purpose is going to be evidence that he's an asshole, and this is going to be part of the reason why he's going to spend a very long time in jail. There are people who have, I saw some legal minds out of Tennessee. They were saying the different levels because when you go into these different states, if it's not federal, when you talk about how people are charged in the states, it's hard to prove a first degree, which we all that's the language we all understand. But depending on the state, it's different.
Yes.
You can't say first degree in a situation. It wasn't premeditated. It didn't go out there and just say, we're going to find this guy and we're going to plan how we're going to kill him. But second degree in some states, manslaughter in others. And so we may even talk to Chuck about that when he comes on because, he is a lawyer and a defense attorney, actually, in addition to being an amazing historian and all around dope dude. So
Awesome.
we'll ask Chuck that question when we get him on the air. All right, so let's move on because we'll get back into that when Chuck comes on. Let me see. What other stories do we want to go on before we get into our what? So, 50th anniversary hip hop was at the Grammys. The Grammys it was a good show. It's really showing that hip hop and R&B is just like, man, it's taken over. It hasn't going. It's pop. It's the main thing that everything focused on. And it was amazing that Linda, what's her name? I want to say Linda Ronstadt. It's not Linda Ronstadt. Who won Record of the Year? Album of the
Her
Year?
name is Bonnie. Oh wait,
Bonnie
Bonnie
Raitt.
Raitt. She won Song of the Year. Bonnie
Song of the
Raitt.
Year. Song of the Year. And she was surprised when she won Song of the Year because she was, and they set it up this year. They had tables just like it was a nice cocktail hour. And Adele and Lizzo were at the table together. They both were up for the record, and she won. And she was like, "I beat them."
It was a Golden Girls moment. It was Blanche and B. Arthur the moment. Where she's like, "What? For real?"
And I was totally cool with it. It is what it is. I mean, the black folk and pop artists and trans and Hispanic, everybody else was winning everything else outside of the country
overall,
awards.
this was the first Grammys where there was representation across the board. No one can say, "Oh, well, my group didn't win," or "It was only this." It wasn't only anything.
Yeah.
Everybody was winning the awards, and it should always be like that. But to y'all Negroes out there, y'all got to stop thinking that Beyonce has to win everything. It's getting ridiculous now. They acting like Lil Harry Styles had the worst album, and who is that? Who is Harry? Stop it.
Right.
This boy sells out arenas across the world.
Right.
His album was good. That Watermelon Sugar song, I can't think of when that was, but that was all over TikTok and the radio for a while. So
right. I know my kids, what got them excited was Harry Styles. As an 11 and almost 10-year-old, that's what got them excited. That Sam Smith performance, I had to turn that off. That was
I didn't watch it. See, I watch highlights of the show. I don't actually watch the show. But congratulations. I think her name is Samantha Petra. She is the first trans woman to win an award.
Mm-hmm.
Their costuming was a lot. The whole red wedding thing was you're making a face. It's fine. We'll move on. The other thing that
you can finish your thought. It was go ahead.
That was it. The other thing that got brought up was the incident during Takeoff's memorial.
Right.
And apparently backstage, Quavo and Offset had a little altercation where Cardi B had to step in and say, "Both of y'all are wrong."
Yeah.
I feel her when she was telling it, like, "Both of y'all are wrong. You guys need to stop." Yeah. But I also feel like I feel like Takeoff should have been on stage. not take off. Offset should have been on stage because they
Mm-hmm.
were group members. No matter what beef there was, they were family
Yeah.
also.
Right.
And then lastly, I have an issue with Quavo kind of doing it by himself when you were part of the reason why your nephew isn't here anymore. Maybe I'm wrong for saying that, but that
No,
is
no,
all.
no. I don't think you're wrong at all. And by the way, quality control just got sold too. That just happened yesterday or today. So I just saw Coach K posted that on his Instagram. But you know, I thought it was a beautiful tribute. I really like Cardi B, and there's a lot of people who like, okay, I just like how she just seems very genuine, even though I'm not a big I'm not a big plastic surgery person, because but her personality is infectious. It really is. And when I heard that audio of her backstage chastising them both, one which includes her husband,
Her
right?
husband.
Is her husband, and not immediately taking his side. And then when they tried to catch her out there in the interview after the fact, and they tried to question what was going on, she basically politely said, "It's none of your business." And that is the way it should have been handled. They said there was some fisticuffs. I don't know, and I don't care. It's a family matter. They lost their man, and I'm sure it's hard to deal with. Why
Yeah.
Offset was not on the stage with Quavo, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. There's an issue that's still brewing with that family, and even though they're public
The
people,
Jay Prince family, which was that whole situation is
what about
very,
Jay
very
Prince?
disturbing. Jay Prince in Houston, I
Mm-hmm.
guess he's basically mafia ties in Houston, black mafia ties in Houston, and he's been
Right.
making threats to Offset and everything, and it's just getting very dangerous. We don't want to have it be another era of, well, not another era. We're still in this era of black rappers getting shot for absolutely no reason, or these little beefs. It's dangerous. It's
Well,
dangerous.
in the industry, there's people who definitely Jay Prince is known to be a gangster in the Houston area, and he has a lot to do with a lot of rappers show him respect and reverence. So I'm not in that game, but Jay Prince definitely has long reach, and so. But anyway, all right, real quick before we bring on Chuck, we got to get into our favorite segment of the show. So these are these stories that are in these internet streets, and we sit up and say, "What? No, this didn't really happen." Yes, it really did happen. So today it's February. We're in the middle of Black History Month, and someone at Clemson, I believe it was, decided that they were going to to have chicken and waffles at the for lunch at the school.
I think you got two stories mixed up. Clemson is the one that had the affirmative action bake sale. This is another elementary school. We'll get to the affirmative action bake sale in a second.
So I mixed up my story. So two ridiculous situations. So let's get to the chicken and waffles and watermelon at the first day of Black History Month. And so here's the thing. I had this conversation. I don't remember who I had the conversation with. But the chicken and waffles piece, I really don't have as much of an issue with that because it's good. Chicken and waffles is
Stop it.
like, come on
Stop
now. I don't know if they did it at FAMU, but I know when I was a freshman at Morgan State, you having that seafood day, everybody comes to the calf on that day because it's something special. Chicken and waffle day, cool. Then they threw the watermelon in there, and that's an immediate racial trope that makes people pause and say, who thought of this was a good idea?
So here's the background. Nyack Middle School's principal called the meal an unfortunate situation in a letter sent to parents on Thursday. The Rockland Westchester News Journal reported, adding that the principal claims it was the food vendor, Aramark, who made a last-minute change to the meal without telling the school's administrators, which I believe that part is true. Because I believe the school would have straight up been like, absolutely not. Y'all can't do this here.
Right.
But I agree with you. Chicken and waffles is not so bad, but the watermelon does make it worse. And the watermelon trope is a trope made up by white farmers. They were jealous of black farmers who knew how to grow watermelon. Growing watermelon is very cheap. I don't know if anybody knows that because one watermelon produces like 1 million seeds that you can then replant over and over again. And they would sell watermelon. So that became the trope by white farmers. I personally think that a different meal could have been served. I think if it would have been chicken and maybe greens and maybe macaroni and cheese, that might have been better. But you're right. It's the watermelon on the side. Even if they would have said, here's this watermelon drink, watermelon soda, it still would have, watermelon sorbet, it still would have been bad.
Yeah, there's no good way to do that. It's just not. And so you just look at this thing and you're just like, okay, guys, and I'll be the first one to say there's sometimes where we as black folks may be a little bit hypersensitive about certain things. This is not the case in this situation. Y'all blew it. And so now you're paying the price. All right, let's move on.
Really quick. It also makes me wonder, were there no black people on staff that day at
where was this? Where was this?
New Jersey?
I don't know, man. First of all, people work. Now think about what staff you're talking about. This ain't no corporate job. We talking about people who work in the lunchroom. They not questioning. Y'all want to put chicken and waffles out here for these kids? Chicken and waffles it is. All right. We were just talking about the Grammys, but then there was this story. Okay, so Chris Brown has gotten nominated for a whole lot of Grammys, and he won a whole lot of nothing. And so he's really not happy. So he lost this year to Robert Glasper, who's one of my favorite musicians. And Chris Brown came out and said, "Who the F is this?" And he got a real quick education on Robert Glasper, who was on volume number 3 of Black Radio, who has won, even though Chris Brown is considered the current king of R&B. Robert Glasper got 5 Grammys, I think, and I think Chris Brown might have 1. But, a lot of people came out, and this really speaks to, this generation. I'm about to be the old dude on the, get off my lawn, but this generation is not curious about music at all, man. If it's not being shown to them in a TikTok dance or Instagram, it's just like it doesn't exist. People trying to say that this is supposed, he should be in the jazz category. Have you listened to the album? The album that features D Smoke, the album that features just so many young R&B artists as well as some classic. But he's not a jazz artist. At least this album is not. It's a dope compilation of amazing musicians, and it deserved the award. Chris Brown did backpedal. He did apologize.
He apologized. He sent the
go ahead.
A direct message saying, "Congratulations, my brother. I would like to apologize if you took offense to my reaction at the Grammys. You were not the intended target, and I know I came off really rude. You were not the intended target. You said, who is this? Who else would be the target when you asked who?" Chris, you made a mistake.
You tried.
Even though some of the wording here I do not like, but at least he said something, because Chris for a long time wouldn't apologize for anything. It's always everybody else's fault, including his incident with Rihanna. So at least he's doing somewhat of the mature thing of saying, I messed up, I shouldn't have said this, and I'm sorry.
And Chris is not a kid, man. Chris has been around. So here's my quick Chris Brown story, and it's always it's always sobering for me. The Lord blessed me where I was driving home in 2005 from DC to Hampton. The song Running was on by Chris Brown. He was this young kid, 16 years old. And I hit a sheet of black ice and spun out across 4 lanes on I-64 going home to Hampton. And I spun out, was in the median, and the car was pointing right where I needed to go. I didn't have a scratch on my car. And there was a guy that was in a semi truck that stopped this semi, came back and walked to me and checked on me and said, "Are you all right? I just missed you." And so anytime I hear Chris Brown's Running, I immediately go back, and there's a picture of Saran, who my now 22, I'm a 23-year-old daughter. I took the picture that morning because I was driving home to go because she had a recital that Friday morning, right? And every time I see that picture with her snaggletooth missing teeth, and it always reminds me. So that picture and the song Running by Chris Brown always reminds me. That was 2005. It's 2023. That's 18 years ago. Chris Brown, grow up, bro. I said all that to say.
But I feel like your story, because Chris Brown is a prominent enough artist where he started when he was 16. Yeah, his first song was
Running.
Excuse Me, Miss? Was it Excuse Me, Miss?
I thought it was Running. If Running isn't his first single, it was one of the first couple. Single. Yeah, right. But anyway, that song always. So Chris Brown, hey man, if you didn't know who Robert Glasper was, you know who he is now. And hey, who knows? Maybe they'll do a song together. Robert Glasper is one of the dopest guys that's out there producing some amazing content. For all you who love DJ Khaled and how he gets on there and pulls everybody together and just DJ Khaled, Well, Robert Glasper is actually a real musician who does the same
That
thing.
old man dinner they had at the Grammys, that old man luncheon they
Hey
had on
man, you can't
stage.
diss God did. God did is the joint now. They closed out the show. They killed it at the end. We can talk about that. And I know my man Chuck gonna have something to say about that, but
It was an old man
it
buffet.
doesn't matter. It was the boys was out there joint representing. You got Jay, you got Rick Ross, you got John Legend, who he is the chameleon. It don't matter. He go from Vegas to hip hop. That boy making money no matter what.
No matter what. And congratulations to them on their new baby.
Oh, okay, that's right. We did talk about that a few weeks back. All right, let me see. Anything else in the hunt? What? Let me see before we bounce. We talked about chicken and waffles with Chris Brown. Any other nonsense stories out there that I forgot that we were supposed to talk about? I guess not.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know Chuck was coming. The last one was the affirmative action bake sale. Yes, that was the affirmative
The
action.
affirmative action bake sale. Go ahead and drop that in real quick because I totally forgot about that. Talk to us about that.
All right, so this is where we got mixed up. So on Wednesday, a conservative student group at Clemson University held a demonstration against affirmative action on campus. No, I don't care about the meaning of it. I know what it is. So what they did is they had a bunch of cookies, and they had Asian cookies were $1.50.
Okay.
I think black cookies were $1 and Hispanic cookies were 20 cents. And they were selling these cookies. It was a horrible idea. And the school was just like, oh, we didn't know and they shouldn't have done this and we'll take action. No, you had to know because you have to get approval for stuff like this from universities. You can't just pull a table out of in front of a university and start selling stuff. That's not how campuses work. This was a horrible idea.
Oh my God.
No,
I just don't get it, man. I don't get it. How these people can live in this world. And, it ain't like it used to be where you don't get no exposure to black people and other cultures. You on TikTok all day, every day. The algorithms, I guess, ain't hit you yet. But this is insane, man. But, it is what it is. All right, so that is
I feel like there can be an issue with affirmative action without doing something stupid like this. Do you know Mindy Kaling, the Indian actress Mindy Kaling?
You always bring her up, and I need to do my research. I know her face if I see her, but what about her?
She's a fat Indian woman. She got a big old round head.
Did you say she's the fat Indian woman? Is that what you said?
Yeah. The reason why I have a very little respect for her, because she does the same thing. But her brother actually got in on an affirmative action scholarship to med school, pretending to be black, and he wrote a book about it. He cut all his hair off, trimmed his eyelashes, and pretended to be black to get into med school. He failed out, of course, because the one thing that people fail to realize about affirmative action is it's just to help us get in the door. We still have to do good to keep the job and do better. Like that's the part that annoys me.
You still got to do the work. All right, so anyway, that's your How What segment of the week. You missed any part of that, go back, check it out on the YouTubes and the Facebooks and all that good stuff. All right, so a lot of conversation has been going on here recently, as we know, around HBCUs. And we talk about it. And so what ends up happening now is that, there's some benefits that we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of benefits, but then there's some challenges. We talked about Deion Sanders here recently. That was a big story, him leaving HBCUs and now going to the University of Colorado. But one of the most knowledgeable people that I personally know about the subject is my man, Chuck Hobbs. And I made the call. He said, man, of course I'm willing to talk about it. Let's talk about it. My man, Chuck Hobbs, good afternoon, good sir.
Hey, good afternoon. Can y'all hear me okay?
We can hear you just fine, brother. We can hear you just fine.
All right. I treated myself for Christmas to a little new computer apparatus thing, and I haven't done any podcasts or anything since. So this is my first time. I was like, okay, I hope everything is like Scarface said on Mind Playing Tricks on Me. Is this thing on? All right.
well, first of all, let me say thank you for adjusting, man. I know you get it. We got these kids. They always got something going on. I know you got to get yours, and kids, a new mom. Absolutely. And all that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good.
What'd you say, Kia?
What we have to do.
Yeah,
we do what we have to
not
do.
that new of a mom or whatever. By the way, Chuck, you look thin. Have you lost weight? You look thin. You really do look thin.
You know what? I like you. I have lost a little weight. I'm going to lose more. But it's a journey. It's funny, Kia, that you asked that. I'll look back at pictures on Throwback Thursdays or Flashback Fridays, and I see myself being this healthy former drum major, former middle linebacker, and you look sometimes and you're like, when did I get this big? It's like how? And it just creeps up on you. And as you age, it's harder to get it off of you, but you have to make a concerted effort because we need to be here for these kids and grandkids. And so I'm committed to doing my best to eat better, walk, and drink lots of water. I have fallen back in love with water, so that's a big help.
My man, my man. Well, let's get into this conversation. We want to talk about HBCUs.
Sure.
And you know, if you don't know Chuck Hobbs, if you need to find that brother. He's got a public profile, and then he's got one that some of us who are fortunate enough to call him friend, you know, daily. This brother is posting stuff, man. We're gonna have to talk towards the back end, man. I know you're a Florida boy, but your hip hop list, bruh. You're in this stirring the pot. Just stirring the pot.
I know.
Yeah,
And it's funny because I sit there some mornings, y'all, and I use my Android. You know, I refuse to get an iPhone. I'm stubborn. And
Oh
I'm
my
sitting
God,
there
y'all green bubbles. Y'all messing up the group chats.
See, we kindred.
Oh
And
my God.
what winds up happening, y'all, is I get in here and I laugh to myself because I'm like, I know this is going to really upset some folks today, so let's go ahead and get it done. So,
hey, your rare steak comment, that attacked me directly. Your rare steak comment. I'm a rare steak person. I am a vampire, and I'm fine with it. Okay?
Hey, and I learned something on that post, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things I love about us as a people. You know, sometimes it gets heated, but I don't know everything. And when I put that out there, and when I learned that that's not necessarily blood, that's just more the coloring of the muscles, I was like, well, heck, I didn't know that. I learned something today. Yeah. But I still want my muscles gray, not too pink and red.
You want it gray with some A1 sauce and Heinz 57.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. Okay?
See, I'm talking about, brother.
I will send it back to the kitchen.
There's still time for growth for you, good brother. As brilliant as you are, there's no doubt about that.
Well, I got you, man.
Let's get into the conversation. People ain't tuning in to just talk about steaks. But one thing, Chuck, you are, and let me make sure I mix it up. Is it Morehouse undergrad or FAM undergrad?
Morehouse undergrad, FAMU grad, and University of Florida for law school.
Got it. And so, you know, Norfolk State grad here, and then Key also is a FAMU grad. So I got rattlers on both sides of me. But you know, we the HBCU conversation is a family conversation. We love our HBCUs. You better not come in here talking bad about our HBCUs outside of our family. But when we get in together, we rib each other a little bit. We have some fun. But, you know, there's been a lot of conversation recently around the education of HBCU, the funding of HBCUs, the whole Deion Sanders conversation. I want to kick it to you and just kind of let you kind of jump into this thing because you're also a great historian of the HBCU community. I talk to folks, and about half of our schools are public institutions. FAMU is not owned by some family, some black family off in the hills. It's owned by the state of Florida. And so when you start talking about funding for the school, the stuff that we want to see, or Bethune-Cookman, which happened recently with Ed Reed and him talking about what was going on, people were just saying, well, just black people need to give more money to their schools. But talk to us about that aspect of it and why funding is such a challenge for HBCUs from your perspective.
No doubt about it, y'all. And as HBCU alumni, each of us understands this. And I think that what we have all struggled to do collectively as HBCU alumni is deal with some of the negative communication that you get from non-HBCU alumni and or those who just generally don't have much understanding of our culture, particularly with respect to our schools. And yet in the social media arenas, they will just sound off loud and often wrong about some of the more basic facts that are important. And among those is the whole issue with funding. HBCUs were never adequately funded. One of the things that I have always found most fascinating about late 19th century and the majority of 20th century history was that when the Jim Crow laws went into effect in the late 19th century, and when the Plessy versus Ferguson decision was handed down by the United States Supreme Court in 1896, the one thing that Plessy versus Ferguson mandated was that schools would be separate but equal. Separate but equal. The problem, though, is that in the Jim Crow South, the all-white legislatures, they were cool with the separate. They knew how to separate, but there was anything but equal going on at any of the public HBCUs. So what you had is decades upon decades of underfunding. You had situations where, you know, I'm fortunate to my mother grew up in Tallahassee, and she grew up at FAMU High School. We call it FAMU High School, but it's a two-part school. There's Lucy Moulton Elementary School that during her time was K through 8, and then the high school was 9 through 12, but it's all under the same auspices, and we generally just call it FAMU High. And so with that, I attended that same school for 8 years when we moved to Tallahassee in 1980. And so what's interesting about that is listening to my mother firsthand and remembering her principal, a Morehouse graduate and a Pi Chapter Nuke named Matthew Esteris, who is considered an education legend here in the state of Florida. You know, I was able to be around her, him, and all of her friends, colleagues. You know how we grew up. That's auntie them, godmama them. And you hear the stories about how books were handed down. They would get books that were scribbled in the margins, pages torn out. They would get broken pieces of chalk, erasers that could barely erase because they had been erasing at the white schools for 10, 15 years prior to being given. And yet from those segregated schools came some of the most amazing men and women of the 20th century. I mean, it's a who's who. You name them, they came out of the segregated Jim Crow South, from Martin Luther King to Rosa Parks to Ralph Abernathy. You name them, they went to segregated Jim Crow schools, and then they went to segregated HBCUs, and they made lemonade out of lemons, right? And so what you have seen happen over the last 30 years in particular is a number of states have decided to fight back, which is, okay, we recognize that the historically Black public institutions in our states have dilapidated buildings. They have all sorts of problems because, again, they just were not getting the funding. And so there have been some successful lawsuits that have come out of it. The state of Alabama was sued by Alabama State and Alabama A&M. You're talking big multiple millions of dollars came out of that lawsuit. And so if you ever get a chance to go to the Alabama State or Alabama A&M campuses over the last 2 decades, they have been on a building and renovation spree because they finally had some of those back dollars allocated. Likewise in Jackson, Mississippi, they have been trying mightily to deal with that for Alcorn State, Mississippi Valley State, and Jackson State University, because all 3 of those schools were historically underfunded as well. And likewise in Tennessee, Tennessee State University has been fighting the Tennessee legislature for decades now, trying to get back appropriations and what have you for its schools. Ditto for the state of Maryland.
Maryland, North Carolina as well.
Absolutely. And North Carolina. And it took forever. And it's so funny because having grown up a Florida boy, everybody likes to say, oh, well, you know, we don't really consider Florida as the Jim Crow South. You know, we see that more like Disney. No.
No, I hate when they say that too. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. Florida was just as Jim Crow as Alabama, Georgia, and all the rest of them.
If not more.
Yeah, Kia, we see it right now, even with Governor DeSantis. I mean, he's who they used to be. There's no surprise. And so just last year, the state of Florida now is about to get sued to see if Florida A&M University can finally get some of its back money from all of the many decades of underfunding. So when you know that history about our public schools, and when you understand that the private schools, the Morehouses, the Morris Browns, the Tuskegees, always had to depend upon philanthropic gifts and what have you. When you get that part, you understand we've always been at a competitive disadvantage. Right. You know, they like to. I have seen a meme talking about the Black Ivies. You know, they've listed Morehouse. You know, depending on who does the meme, any given day of the week, you'll have different 4 or 5 Black colleges on it. But I consistently see Morehouse, Spelman, Hampton, Howard. And when you realize that the endowments at those schools are a percentage of what the real Ivies have, the Harvards, the Yales, and the Princetons, we've been at a competitive disadvantage from jump. And so
let me jump in really fast. Because I have a couple of questions. You know, my dad, you know, watches the show. How he watches the show, I have no idea because he's not inclined to the internet. No idea. But he had a lot of prominent questions that I didn't even think about of, you know, and maybe we sat there yesterday and we looked up some things. FAMU has a lot of alumni who do give back. FAMU, even though they're going to sue the state to get their money, has again made lemons out of the lemonade. I went to FAM when I was going there. They were starting to build new buildings and bring new things in. We just got a new gym / auditorium situation going. when you look at the alumni for Bethune, there's nobody there. And maybe not to give back, but to sound the alarm of something is wrong. Y'all got to fix this. There's nobody who prominently has graduated from Bethune-Cookman. So is that a reason why at least the alarm hasn't been sound louder before these kids started getting on TikTok and social media complaining?
I do think that's part of it. And Kia, to be honest, I've got a couple of really good friends that are BCU alums, and they have been out there like John the Baptist, almost crying in the wilderness. And what I mean by that is there are a committed group of them who have over the last decade tried their level best to help with funding, but maybe they're just not hitting on the right, chords with the right people. Because think about it, like when we think about FAMU and you think about Frederick Humphreys, who is generally considered the greatest president in FAMU history and arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest president in HBCU history. I mean, obviously you can argue a lot of other people, but Fred Humphreys was right up there. One of the things that was amazing about him, and having grown up in Tallahassee and gone to FAMU High with his son Lawrence and having seen it firsthand, that man knew how to raise funds.
Yeah.
He was constantly selling FAMU, like no shame. He'd run up in the corporate offices of all of these amazing Fortune 500 companies, tell them why it is they need to donate, and those companies would donate. And, because I can remember in the mid 1980s, y'all, FAMU's physical plant was in bad shape too. You know how we're seeing about Bethune-Cookman's physical plant. I remember some of the quadrangle in between Coleman Library, Lee Hall. Yeah, that used to be rocks, patches of grass here and there. So all of that beautiful grass and bushes and the eternal flame that you see now, that wasn't there when I was in middle school even, all right? You could walk across there and slip and cut your legs and your hands up on broken glass and stuff like that. But there was a committed effort by President Humphreys to say, hey, we need to renovate Lee Hall. We need to renovate Jackson Davis Hall. Jones Hall needs to be renovated. So we're going to go and we're going to get this money and that money. And we're going to bring in all these people. And I think that that's what each of our schools is going to have. You're going to have at least one person, be they an alum or someone who is just committed to the cause, who can say, all right, I'm going to take the baton and I'm going to do all that I can to try to fundraise for this particular institution or these institutions. And that's what it's going to come down to.
Let me ask you this, because, growing up between DC and VA, I've been down south 15 years. So I've been down here for a while. But growing up in an area, I grew up when I was a kid, 5-minute walk to Howard University, right? After I left DC, I went down to Hampton. I lived 3 minutes from Hampton University. My grandmother's a Hampton Institute graduate. It always feels like, because of proximity with these southern schools, that they're a little bit isolated, right? Tallahassee is you out there, right? Jackson State, Mississippi Valley State, Bethune-Cookman, and Daytona. In Virginia, D.C. is close to the legislature, is close to this to the federal government. There's a lot of proximity, and it always seemed like FAMU is winning in a lot of ways because it's been very visible. There's a lot of people who've had great success coming out of FAM, and they're really sounding that alarm. But what has happened down to Bethune, because I remember going down to Bethune during my broadcasting days, when we would play Bethune, I could walk on that campus and feel that there ain't nothing been taken care of on this campus but this football field. The rest of this campus is in disrepair. And that's not something now. Norfolk State, even, I go back home to homecoming now, and in the 25 years since I graduated, and see the difference now, and with the federal funds that have come in. But it seems that these state legislatures in these southern states have been so disrespectful to these HBCUs and keeping them afloat, that that's part of the problem. But I know you're a lot more in tune with a lot of these schools deep down south.
No, you're 100% correct. And I think that it's a two-tier lack of allocation, because in addition to the state legislatures for the public HBCUs not dispersing funds with the same at the same level as their predominantly white institutions, you also have a dearth of federal allocation when in terms of research dollars and things of that nature,
right,
that will blow your mind away. One of my Morehouse brothers, William Easley, posted an article from Forbes magazine a few weeks ago that had a chart in terms of how many dollars are being allotted by the federal government to each one of the HBCUs, and you'll be blown away that obscure, predominantly white institutions with no history of graduates making any dent in American society are getting way more money than prominent HBCUs who, again, have produced graduates who are the who's who in their individual states and across the United States of America. And so, again, and that's been since the civil rights movement. That's been since we have had black friendly faces in Congress, Democratic controlled Congresses, Democrats in the White House who are friendly, and they'll come and speak at our schools. But again, that's cool and all. Photo ops are great, but like the poet J.T. Money of the Poison Clan used to say, the way you show me your love is by the way you pay me. And so at the end of the day, if the dollars aren't filtering in to HBCUs, again, you're going to have certain issues where the physical plant just is not going to look as nice as it's going to look at even the community college that's right down the street. I mean, it can be very frustrating.
Yeah, go ahead,
so I have another question really quick. I know this part probably annoys me more than anything in the world is everybody likes to give all this credit to Donald Trump about he's the reason why, HBCUs are giving all this funding. We've all heard that, like when he had that weird photo op with the girl with her knees on the couch. But sorry,
I'm still mad about that too. Right.
My mother would never. My mother would never be on her knees on anybody's couch. But what I'm asking is why that's not true. Can you explain a little bit more why that photo op and them saying that is not 100%? It's not true. It's just he just kept the funding going. He didn't all of a sudden say, "Hey, here's these billions of dollars." That's not what happened.
That's not how government works.
So it's two things that are true. More money should have been allotted even during Democratic administrations, going back to the Clintons. But money has been allotted. Yeah. And so essentially what Donald Trump did was he continued the pipeline that had already been set in stone through the Clinton administration, through even George W. Bush, on through the Obama administration. And what he did, because he's a showman, is, again, he put that out there in terms of, I've given more money to the HBCUs than any of my predecessors, which was a whole lie, right?
That was the best impression from a black person I've ever seen.
Thank you very kindly. And yet you get one or two influencers who get on social media, you get one or two hoteps who want to just, because again, that's something else we can all come back and talk about another time.
That's a whole other conversation,
Yeah, man, how some of those hoteps are carrying the water for the Donald Trump types. It's like, wow, there's some incongruency here in terms of that. But they start saying, oh yeah, see, look what Trump did. Look what Trump did. And it's all fake. It really is. So again, he did no more than any of his predecessors, but he did a wonderful job in terms of beating his own horn or tooting his own horn, because that's essentially what he often did. So yeah, totally incorrect, misinformation, fake news. And yet our presidents couldn't come out and really say it like that. Right. Because unfortunately, black college presidents, they're not in a position to be overly political.
No, they are employees of a state. Their funding is they can't come out here and talk about their governors. So their governors is going to have a reason to continue what they're doing and cutting their funding, right? And so you look at the William Harveys of the world and what he did at Hampton over the course of 40 years. My grandmother, rest her soul, her generation wasn't a big fan of what he was doing, but I understood as a business person now what he was doing. And so, the whole thing about, and I know we close on time, but the whole thing about even with sports and how important sports is in the marketing of our universities. Deion Sanders, he wasn't meant to be at Jackson State for 20 years.
No.
The money that you paying him $300,000 a year, if that, he giving half of it back to the school so he can try to give some money so he can pay for his coaches. And University of Colorado, the endowment, I did this when I did the show a few months back. The endowment of Colorado was somewhere in the 300 million or 300. What was that number? It was closer to about 6 billion or something like that. And then Jackson State was like 65 million or something crazy. It was apples and apples to peanuts. And so we have to give our schools some grace and stop being the first ones that's out here dogging them. We also have state situations like here in Georgia. Georgia State is buying up the city of Atlanta. not
Yeah.
only the city, but the surrounding counties. You know, they have a new designation now where it's minority serving institutions, I believe is what it's called. And so
Hmm.
now monies that may have gone to a to a Fort Valley State or some of the other state institutions in Georgia, they say just give it to Georgia State. And once again, that's another institution that's not serving our community as being their primary focus. And so we got to keep that stuff in mind when we're quick to want to dog our institutions. When it's all said and done, when you talk about scientists, doctors, attorneys like yourself, a lot of us have this experience of going through HBCUs, and I wouldn't give it up for the world.
Absolutely. And y'all, I don't like seeing the dogging out either. It's not as if there weren't some legitimate issues that were raised by the students, by
Mm-hmm.
Ed Reed. I thought that Ed
Mhm.
Reed did not raise them in a professional way.
Right.
And there was no eureka there. Everybody, all of us, particularly
Yeah, that's true.
HBCU grads, knew there's problems there.
But
So
it
it's
was
not
new for
like,
him. That's the part we got to
right,
give
it's
him
new
that
for
grace.
him.
To
Yeah.
him, he
Yeah.
was like, "Hold up, I went to the University of Miami. Well, you know, look at this. What is this nonsense?" We all like, that's
Honestly, it's
kind
like
of
if
like
you
how
walk
it
into a
is.
job. It's like when you walk into a job at a tech company, instead of having a computer, they hand you a typewriter that you got to push across. You're like, this is a typewriter, sir. What am I supposed to do with this typewriter?
Right.
This is
Yeah,
not
you
what I
hit it
need.
on the head. You hit it on the head. And so the issue becomes, what are you there for? Are you there to try to improve it and help it? Or if not, that's cool. Say, hey, this is not the right opportunity for me at this time. I'm going to do something else. And that's the only thing that really frustrated me is
Yeah.
seeing so many people on social media like, well, Ed Reed had all these billionaires that were ready to come in and well, why they still should come in then. If you're
Right.
a black billionaire and you care about black progress and you understand the history of Bethune-Cookman and how critically important that school has been in the cause of civil rights here in the state of Florida, why wouldn't you still try to cut some money to them to try to help them? So again, we're kind of, I don't know, we kind of get all over the place.
And that's because, you know, once again, it's a celebrity piece. And here's the thing, it's fine. You're a celebrity. You know, Dr. Dre put a bunch of money up at you at University of Southern California and got his name on a building and all this type of stuff. You know, here's what we know. Ed Reed ain't prime.
Right.
You know, as far as his presentation, in part his ability to play the game. Ed Reed is not even Eddie George, who's at Tennessee State now.
True.
And I hope this does not deter future athletes with that level of ability to reach the corporate side and kind of bridge that gap to continue to go to HBCUs and cut their teeth at HBCUs, because we still need the Deions. They ain't but one Deion Sanders, ain't but one prime.
True.
I don't give a
True.
doggone, ain't but one prime. But to see some of these other players still get engaged, I hope this doesn't deter them what happened with Ed Reed. Go ahead, Kia.
I got to end our interview. I always get to end it with something really, really fun that has nothing to do with this topic. Chick-fil-A just announced that they are
God.
introducing the fried cauliflower sandwich instead of a new chicken sandwich as a more healthier option. What do you guys think about that?
That ain't gonna last.
You know what's funny? I'm an old Southern boy. Y'all know I like fried everything. It might be good. Like in the last decade or so, I've actually tried some of the vegan fare, the not meat, the Beyond stuff. Some of that stuff's actually pretty good. Now, I
Be
still
careful with
prefer
the
a
Beyond
fried
Meat, though.
complete. Huh?
Be
Beyond
careful
Meat's
with the
got a lot
Beyond
of sodium in it.
We
Okay,
learned a lot
okay.
about that from another guest we had,
Yeah.
and she's just like,
Okay.
no,
A lot of
It's a lot
sodium
of
in Beyond
chemicals
Meat.
in
But
Got you.
and, you know, I was just talking about this just Monday, actually. It was in a business meeting. We were talking about Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A does something, makes great chicken and customer service. And the difference between Chick-fil-A and Popeyes is that there's bones in the meat in Popeyes, and it takes 12 minutes to fry some bone-in chicken and 3 minutes to fry some chicken strips. That's how they get that food out so fast. That
This is
cauliflower
true.
sandwich, I get that thing a season.
And then it's gone. I got you. But I will try it, especially with a glass of lemonade, because that lemonade is so addictive. I'm like, Lord have mercy. I try to stay away from it because
Man,
that's my cheat stuff.
it
Big
is. It
orange
is.
lemonade from Chick-fil-A.
So before we let you go, you still doing your podcast with your two, I think it was Iron Sharpen Irons, or how? Let folks know how to reach you.
I've been on hiatus, Snoop, for about 6 weeks. You know, because we went hard through the pandemic. We went every week for almost about 16, 17 months straight.
Yep.
And to be honest, I kind of got a little burned out. And so my partners understood that. They've given me a little grace, but I'm back rejuvenated now. And so I anticipate being back on Steel Sharp and Steel, as well as churning out Observation Point podcast as well. So I will keep y'all posted. And again, anytime y'all would like to have me on, I always love chopping it up with you two.
Man, absolutely, man. We appreciate you making the adjustments. We all got to get back to work and continue on in this day. But if you miss any part of this, make sure you share this out because it's a great conversation. I'm going to chop it up a little bit, drop a few clips. But Chuck, we always appreciate your insight, brother.
Always, fam. Y'all take care.
All right, man. Get that hip hop list together, man. You got.
For sure. I'm gonna work on it. I'm gonna work on being a little more diverse.
All right, man. All right. I appreciate you.
I'll take it easy.
All right, peace. All right, sis. Well, I know you like me. We gotta get back on this grind and get back to the rest of this day and get to these kids here soon. Yeah. But great show.
That was a great interview.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interview. So,
absolutely.
I'm glad we had Chuck on. We always love having Chuck on. We'll have Chuck on in the future, and eventually, G-Pa Gainey will be on maybe once he's now become our secondary producer, calling me with ideas every other day for the show. He is Mama Blanche and G-Pa Gainey. That's my dad.
Okay. Well, I'm good with that. I'm good with that all day. And I appreciate your family always being supportive. All right, sis. Well, we'll figure out what we're going to do next week. We'll figure out when we're going to do it next week because this AAU season is about to be all up in, I can't wait till your kids get to be that age.
We'll see y'all when we see you.
I can't wait till you get that age, boy, when your kids got you running around on soccer fields and everything, and you come up in that joint like, oh, I can't do it.
My babies are in soccer on Tuesdays. You know that. They have soccer on Tuesday mornings, and Devin has soccer on Fridays.
I'm talking about real competitive, got the real schedules, not you getting out there and you eating your grain, your little Nutri-Grain bars on the side. I'm talking some real competitiveness. All right, y'all.
All the moms have wine in their sippy cups. We all
I'm
drink
sure
wine
they do. I'm sure they do. All right, y'all. Peace.
Bye.